Hey, good morning, everyone. We're just gonna kind of introduce ourselves before we get started, or as we're getting started, and allow others to log in. We can see the attendee numbers are kind of jumping up. But I'm Mark Bateman of Qolsys. Today we're here with who are we with?
Rod Halford with Alarm.com.
With Alarm.com, and he oversees director of some technical services. Deals a lot with access control, some of the commercial side of things. And we're very excited to have Rod on today to go over access control with us. As you guys know, the panel, 2 years ago it came out. It was this great residential panel, and it's great for high volume and stuff. But over the last year, with the introduction of Power G sensors and the range you get, and adding that to also partitions, things like that we've added over just the last little while through software updates. The panel is being used more and more in commercial settings, and which has kind of led us to this meeting with Rod today, this webinar going over access control. So we're very excited to have Rod. We're here in the Alarm.com. What is this?
It's called the Rig Utah facility. We're down in Provo, Utah. So we've got a small team here. Great facility.
This is an awesome facility. The Rig is, if you guys could see inside here, this place is something else. The way they have it set up, it definitely is like a rig. But let's get started. We're gonna actually shut down the webcam, but as we go through this today, you might notice there are some polling questions that may come up.
Yeah, and as we go through this presentation today, we want to make sure we answer your questions. So I'll be talking a lot, flipping through a lot of slides, but I'll stop periodically so we can address your questions. Mark will be keeping an eye on the questions that are asked, and then we'll stop and try and cover as much of those as we can. And just a little bit of a background, Mark and I, we've worked together, for many years in the past, and a lot of the guys at Qolsys are very good friends of mine, and really excited for this opportunity to do this. So
I think we go back to, it must have been like 2004 or something.
Yeah, yep.
So a long time. Yep. When I first met this guy, I was asking him, hey, what's your background? How did you get into the industry? I think you told me in the past you've done stereos.
Yep, car audio, car security, home audio.
So
rock and roll guy.
Rod was one of my mentors back then that kind of helped me get in the industry and helped train me up. So it's cool just how small the industry is and how we all know each other. But let's jump into this webinar. We're gonna stop sharing our webcam and gonna show you the deck that we have prepared.
All right, so really excited to be here today. Access control has become dear to my heart. Spend a ton of time on this. We've got a small team that travels all over the country and does these trainings for dealers. Some of you may have attended some of those trainings, but these are, I'm a technician. I've been a technician for many years. One of the cool things about our team is we actually install this stuff. So we'll go out and help dealers do installations on site as part of the training. So, if any of you are access control gurus and you've got any input or anything you'd like to add, that'd be great. If you've got questions about any part of access control, go ahead and ask those questions. So jumping right in, probably the most exciting thing that I see across the country as we install this in small, medium-sized businesses is this unified solution I'm going to talk about a little bit. You're able to see your cameras, you're able to control your thermostats, you can unlock and lock doors, you can arm and disarm your alarm system. All these things can be done from the Alarm.com app. And as I talk to business owners, it's really given them back a lot of time that they were wasting driving from site to site, calling, checking in to make sure the alarm was armed, wanting to view events and not being able to get a real easy way to do that. So in the past, you've got an NVR, you've got a security system, you've got your energy management access. All this is on separate platforms. And so now they're able to see all of this under one roof. If somebody is broken into a building, I can go to my event history, and I can see that the video that ties to that event. I can see what time it happened. I can rearm the system. I can disarm the system. So it just puts a lot of control back into the business owner's hands. Basically works very similar to an Alarm.com camera. You've got an IP connection to the alarm.com cloud. We provide the access control controller, all of the expansion modules, all the other devices, your locks, your Rex devices, door position switches, all that stuff comes from your local distribution. As you can see here, our platform is built on Mercury. Mercury is one of the largest manufacturers of access control in the world. So you may come across Mercury in the process of taking over a security system. You may go on to switch out the alarm and notice that they've got a Mercury access control system, and that can be taken over. All you have to do is basically switch the controller out from their controller to our controller with our firmware and take that account over.
So Rod, real quick, so Mercury is they're one of like the leading brands out there with access control.
Yep.
It's kind of like if you're looking at door locks, you're going to see Kwikset and Yale.
Yep.
With access control, Mercury's the main thing out there.
Yep, you'll see it. A lot of different companies branded. It's an open platform, so you can go in and control it however you want. There's a lot of features that we're building out every week, because this controller will do way more even than what we're using it for, but we will eventually build out all the functionality and features of the brain. So,
okay.
Yep.
So that's good to know. Retrofit friendly and works with Mercury hardware.
Yep. One other thing I want to bring up, so everything's stored at the controller, so it's very responsive. You know, that's one of the questions I get asked a lot is, hey, this is cloud-based. When I scan my card, how long do I have to stand at that door to wait for it to open? Well, it's instantaneous because everything's stored at the controller. Even if you lose connectivity, the system, as far as internet connectivity, still continues to work. Okay, this is just a real simple, for those of you that are not familiar with access control, you basically have a card reader, a Wiegand-based card reader that's tied to the controller. Then you have a credential that the user is associated with. That user presents that at the reader, and based on their setup and how their access credentials are set up, it will either let them in that door or may not let them in that door. So you can set up access plans around times, people, and people and doors. So those three things.
And as part of those credentials, like you have the card, you can also do fobs.
Yep. We currently do not do Bluetooth. I get asked that a lot, but we do, the fobs and the cards. Okay, and I just thought it'd be a good idea real quick to just show you some of the hardware. So these are your locking devices, strikes, mag locks, electrified lock sets. When I talk about a Rex or a request to exit device, these are the devices I'll be referring to. You've got a push button as well as a motion. So any of these can be used to open a door from the inside to let people out of the building, either in an emergency situation or just on a daily basis. Once that request to exit motion sees movement, it will unlock the door. Stop a minute. Okay, so want to talk about the user experience as far as on the user side and on the installer side. So we've done a great job in making this very simple to install. So should all be aware of Mobile Tech and the partner portal. Either place you can install the controller, configure the doors, and do all those things. It's very simple. We've done a great job of including pictures, so you can see here that this is an actual picture of the controller, and you're basically just selecting each one of these inputs and telling it what's connected to it. So you can do this on the phone, on your phone, or laptop or computer. Customer the same that you're used to. The one thing that's added with access control is this office reader. The top card is the access control doors. The next one is your Z-Wave doors, and of course your garage doors. So from the app, I can buzz open an access control door. I can permanently unlock that door or lock that door. You can also integrate the access control with scenes. And then same thing from the website. I can choose the access control doors, select the door that I want to unlock or buzz open, unlock that door, and then it comes up and shows that it's unlocked in the status. Okay, the next piece that ties to the access control, and we're not going to go into this a lot today, it's mainly going to be on the installation side. But access plans and schedules, this is how you determine who can get into what door and when. So you can have as many of these plans as you'd like. Here on this screen, we've got a manager plan, which is a 24/7 access plan. It's tied to 2 doors. It gives you a lot of information here as far as how many users are tied to that access plan, what doors, and what times. So these are very simple to set up and very beneficial to the owner of the business and to the users. So just real quick, on the app, you can do basically anything you can do from the website, except for automation. So you still have to create your automation around, if you're tying video to access or you're tying access to security, some of those automations need to be created on the website and cannot currently be created on the mobile app. And then last, on the user side, we have an enterprise access control platform that's just been released in probably the last 30 to 60 days. This allows a business owner that has, say, 10 sites to be able to view all those sites under one login and control all those sites from one login. So across the top here, you can see it tells me how many open locations I've got, closed. The business warnings that would probably be a late open. So that location opened late. It will tell you the status of armed or armed stay or disarmed. And then it shows your doors. How many doors are locked, how many are unlocked, and then any active issues or trouble conditions will also show up here. And then if I want to go into one of these sites, like Qolsys Solar System, I click on that and that will take me directly to that site. So let's stop here for just a second. Looks like we've got a few questions. Looks like Mark's answering some of them.
I'm answering some as we just go through this, but there's a couple that I want to ask, have everybody involved on. And the first one was, does this support AWID?
Not currently.
Not currently.
No.
And then also, somebody said that you mentioned that this is not compatible with Bluetooth, but they said they're using a linear Blue Pass, which is a Bluetooth reader. They're currently using it now.
Yep, it'll work.
So
It's not been tested thoroughly through our system, so we've had one here that we've been using as well, but it's not currently supported. So it will work, but if you have issues with it or questions, our support team's not going to be able to help you with that.
So I get that, because with Qolsys, we get things that do work with the panel, but they're not on our official list yet. They're still in testing, and
that's where we're at. Yep.
Certifying them. And then the last question was just how many users can be tied in?
So if you look at Mercury's website, the 1501, which is this controller that we're talking about right now, will handle 150,000 users. We've tested up to 1,300. So as we get larger and larger accounts set up, we push that number out, but we've tested and know that it will work up to 1,300 users.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And then real quick, what is the purpose of the mini USB slot?
The mini USB slot. Where?
I haven't seen that.
There isn't one.
Maybe that's on the Qolsys panel.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we don't have we have the regular Ethernet port, and that's it.
And is this UL listed in the acceptable by fire marshals?
Yes. And that really comes down to the code and how whatever the code in your jurisdiction is. This does have a fire alarm integration. Some jurisdictions will allow maglock, some won't. The fire alarm release has to be wired a certain way in different jurisdictions. So as long as you follow whatever the code and jurisdiction they require, you'll be fine.
So on that, some jurisdictions do not allow like maglocks.
That's correct.
So it's just depending, but most do, but there's some.
Yeah, some states you cannot install maglock, period. Okay, moving right along. So we're going to get into the installation piece here. We're going to talk today about system design and layout, system hardware and the wiring, and then we're going to show you how to configure it and program the doors on the back end. We're going to have to move right along here. So system design. So at alarm.com, we talk about two different type or style of installation and system design. Centralized design is you're going to home run everything back to a central server room, and all your wiring has to go back to there. All your equipment is in that room. It's great as far as terminating. It's great for servicing. Everything's in one spot, a little easier to service, but it is more expensive. You've got extensive cost in wire and labor to run all that. The next one we refer to as an edge design. So this would be installing the controller in a PoE configuration right above the door. You just have to drop your wires to the lock, the Rex, and the door position switch, and then run a Ethernet connection to your switch. So this is a lot cheaper when it comes to running wires and the cost of wire. So these are the pieces of hardware that we work with. You've got the ACC 117, which is the single door controller on the left. Our newest controller, the ACC 234, which is a true two-door controller. The ACX1 is a single door expansion module, and this ACX2 is a double door expansion module. So you combine these in whatever configuration you need, depending on the number of doors that you'll be installing. So typically, right now, probably the average number of doors we're doing, Mark, are like 3 to 4 on an account. When you purchase a system, you're going to receive one of these kits. The kit on the left is our PSE kit, power supply enclosure. It has a 12 volts, a 4 amp power supply. At 3 amps, 24 volts, you get 3 amps of power to work with. In this can, you get the 12 volt and 24 power. The kit on the right is our PoE kit. And then this is our newest enclosure. This is a little larger can. You can put a two-door controller, or excuse me, a two-door expansion right here. You can see it's already pre-wired. So these terminals will plug right on to that terminal.
And then that switches it from 2 doors to 4 doors.
Yep. And then also one thing that's different on this one is we've got this power distribution block. This is an F8P. So just as far as wire management and being able to connect everything clean and neat, this is very handy. So,
and just to be clear, somebody asked this also, that ACC 117, it can do 2 doors, but when you go to 2 doors, they're unsupervised.
That's correct. Yep. And we'll get into that here in just a second. And then we've also come out with some empty enclosures. These are pre-drilled. All you have to do is put standoffs in here, and then you can add as many ACX1s or ACX2s that will fit in the enclosure. So depending on how big of a system you're doing, you'll want to add these enclosures as needed. And those are all available on our website. So this is the 1501 or the ACC 117. This will do 12 volts DC or PoE to power the controller. You've got 2 programmable inputs. So as Mark was just talking about, supervised and unsupervised, I can connect 2 doors to this controller, but I'm not able to do a fully supervised door. So supervised means that I can tell if the door is forced open or held open. So an input would be a request to exit motion, door position switch, pressure mat, request to exit button. Those are all inputs. And so I could put one input on each door. I could monitor maybe the door position, so I would know if the door was held open or closed. We've got 2 dry relays on board. You can do a maximum of 8 expansion modules on this controller. And it doesn't matter if they're 2-door or single door, but you can do a maximum of 8. So that will give you 17 doors per controller, 68 total doors on an account. And like we talked earlier, 1,300 users have been tested. Any questions on this controller?
Just can we link a camera with access control reader?
So you can link a camera on the back end through the alarm.com system. So I could have the Qolsys panel with 3 or 4 cameras and the access control, and those can all tie together. So I could set up a rule that says anytime someone scans in or cards in at the front door, I want there to be an image taken with that camera and emailed to me. So there's a lot of automation on the back end. There's event histories that you can go through and see when cards were scanned and the video that ties to that. So yes. Okay, this is the newest controller, and this is so new that we really don't have a lot of the information on it on this presentation. So this will be the only slide we really talk much about it. But this controller only works off 12 volts. It's not a PoE controller, so 12 volts. It has 8 programmable inputs. You've got 2 readers, 4 dry relays. You can do a total of 16 expansion modules, so it'll give you 34 doors per controller, and you still get 68 doors per account. One thing that's nice about this is you get a true 2-door. You can fully supervise 2 doors, and you actually get more. I could put up to 3 inputs on each door, so I could have a request motion, I could have a request to exit button, I could also have a door position switch.
And can these be tied into the alarm system at all? Like if the alarm system's armed away, somebody comes through one of these doors?
Yeah, so you can use one of the relay outputs as a shunt. So when you badge in that door, you can set up a rule that says activate the shunt, which would basically mimic the door contact and fake it out, make it think it's closed, able to come in, drop the package, and leave without setting alarm.
Awesome. And that question came from Jeff McKay, so thanks, Jeff.
Let's see here. So just real quick, the PoE can comes as shown. You got 328 feet of distance that a PoE connection will work. You've got 650 milliamps of output on this device. So no additional power is required. You can run a strike, motion. Those devices should run just fine off of this one fully supervised door. This is the layout. So here's our PoE connection, our Ethernet connection. Dip switches in the top right-hand corner. You always want to remember to turn these off. This is one of the biggest questions that our support team gets asked, or well, basically they have to tell the dealer to turn these off because they forget. So always remember to turn all 4 of these switches off. This is a power reset or a power cycle. Those of you that work with electronics know that your cell phone, your iPad, sometimes your alarm system need to be power cycled. So this is basically a power cycle. Then at the bottom in the middle, we have a PoE to 12 volt jumper. So if this is going to be used as a PoE device, we need to pull this jumper off and put it on the PoE side. If we're going to use it in the PSE kit, and we're using 12 volts, we would, sorry about that, let me just turn this off. We would switch it to 12 volts. Okay, next we've got our relays. So relay 1 and relay 2, these are our 12 volt DC outputs, so power and ground here to feed that relay. This is our reader 1 and our inputs. And just real quick show you the wiring on this. So to get power to your relay for when you're doing a PoE setup, you need to put a little jumper there from your voltage out, which is that first terminal VO, over to your common wire on the relay. So that's providing power to the relay. Then we go hook our strike up. So we've got a ground and our normally open for a strike. If it was a mag lock, we'd wire it normally closed. Strikes can be wired normally open or normally closed, but are typically normally open. And in this scenario, we'd want to use reader 1 instead of reader 2. And this is our reader connection. Just one thing to remember, every reader is different. The wires are going to be different. This is an HID reader. We always want to hook our LED to the green LED output on the reader. So across the bottom here, we've got power. This is our green LED, buzzer, data 1, data 0, and ground.
So that has to be on the reader 1 because it has all of that extra wire, right?
Well, because we're using part of reader 2 over here. Okay. On the left. So this is our power for reader 2. We're going to use that to power our relay, and it just gets messy trying to double up wires. The hole's not very big, so I like to use reader 1 because we're only going to do 1 door with a PoE setup. Okay, we're not going to do 2. All right. And then there's our inputs: door position switch and request to exit device. Okay, and then the only real difference here. We've got power in this kit, so we've got 24 volts and 12 volts. This comes in handy. Some of the devices, some of the hardware requires 12 volts, some requires 24 volts. And this is our 24-volt power supply. It also powers the controller. So at the top in the right-hand corner, I hope you can see my mouse, this is a B100. So the B100 is a step-down converter. It basically takes our 24 volts, converts it to 12 volts. We have, at 24 volts, like I mentioned earlier, we have 3 amps of power. That B100 and the power supply are sharing that. So we basically have 1.5 amps on the B100. We got 1.5 amps on the main power supply.
So even though that 24 volt can be, you can use a jumper to drop it down to 12, you still leave it at 24 for the 12 volt power converter.
Yeah, and I'll just address that really quick. It's a very good point, Mark. I don't know if you've done this before, but the issue with this power supply is if you switch it to 12 volts, the B100 stops working.
Okay.
Because it requires 3 more volts than it can give. So if I need 12, I got to give it at least 15.
That makes sense.
So it steps it down to 9. And we run into a lot of issues when that happens because everything appears that it's working, right? So this control light up, the lights are flashing, everything looks like it's working, but there's not enough power there for it to fully function. So if you need 12 volts, I would suggest switching this jumper right here. I've got a better picture that we'll look at later, and disconnect everything from the B100 and make all your connections here. So if I change this to 12 volts, now everything's 12 volts, and I want to make sure and disconnect these orange and black wires because that's what's powering this. Good question, Mark. The green plug on the left-hand side is our fire release, fire alarm integration port. There's our 12 volts coming from the B100. The blue wire is pre-wired at the factory. That's basically feeding 24 volts to your relay number 1. And then if you stand 2 9 amp hour batteries on end right here in this corner, you can, you've got just enough room to put the backup batteries, and then you could also add 1 single door expansion. And then same thing, same configuration, exactly the same. Don't forget to turn the dip switches off. You got your reset button, your PoE to or 12 volt switch. We've got 2 relays on board. The ones on the left here are relay 2, the ones on the right are relay 1, and the center on both sides are your common or your input. Then you got your DC input coming from the B100. There's your reader number 2, reader number 1, or RS45. So we talked a little bit about this. The reader number 1 becomes my data bus. It's going to feed data to my expansion modules. So that's why we would always connect to reader number 2 when we're connecting it to a power supply. In the PoE configuration, we can use reader number 1 because we're not going to add any expansion modules. And there's our inputs. Okay, does anybody have any questions? The same wiring. Just go through this real quick. Once you add the expansion modules, you can see here the green, white, and the black become our RS45 data. So that's what it would look like. Any questions?
One that came up was, can a valid card read disarm the security panel? So we're going to get into this later, but yes, it can. You can assign. So we've had a couple people ask that. Another question was, is the power linear?
Made by linear? What do you mean by that?
That's just Ronald. He just said, is it linear? But he did spell it out by like, is it linear power? Like. So
it's the life safety FPV 4 is the power supply. So you could look that up. Not sure what he means by that. Okay, so door position switches. Are there any questions? I guess any other questions before I take off?
Just one more. Do you need a DP/DT contact to talk to both the alarm and controller?
No. You need an LTE radio, and whatever alarm panel you have, that's how it communicates between the 2.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay, these are examples of a door position switch inputs. You guys are all very familiar with these. These are used in security all the time. These are your inputs. Tells you if the door is open or closed. Request to exit devices, the push button or motion style. This just allows for the occupants to safely exit the building during normal business hours and also during emergencies. And the connection is very simple. You've got your door position switch. You can put that on input 1 or 2. It doesn't matter. We'll configure that on the back end when we add it. Our motion, same thing. We've got a normally open or normally closed connection there, and then the motion does require power, so we would typically connect that to our B100. This is the wiring for a strike. So as I mentioned earlier, the blue wire is in place from the factory. It's pre-run. You're going to ground the strike, and we're going to connect it to the normally open side. So a strike requires power to unlock if it's set up as a normally open device. And the mag lock, same thing. We're going to ground it, and we're going to connect that to the normally closed side. So it requires power for that mag to lock. And so very simple. Got any questions, go ahead and holler out. Here's a simple diagram. If you want to take a quick picture of this, this seems to be popular for people to take a picture of, just so they've got it in their mind, what it looks like. Normally open, normally closed, strike, and mag lock. So fail safe and fail secure, these are questions that are always asked when we do our trainings. Fail safe is very simple. It just means if there's a complication, or if we lose power, or there's any system failure, that you can exit that building. So it's safe, you can get out no matter what. Fail secure, on the other hand, may be an interior door, maybe in a server room, a inventory room, somewhere that you, even if there's an issue in the building, you lose power, or there's a fire, you want that door to stay locked no matter what. So that's the difference between fail safe and fail secure. And this is just a basic wiring, what you would be looking at if you did one door with a power supply kit. There's any questions there, but it's pretty straightforward. If you've installed access control wire is the same from can to can. They're all pretty much the same.
And it looks like alarm.com makes it pretty easy. So even if you're kind of newer at this, I'm seeing, at least this PowerPoint you're sharing, it's showing, hey, where each wire is going. And then as we get into this more, you'll probably show, wiring guide.
This is where it really gets awesome, is in the system configuration. So I've taken people that know absolutely nothing about access control and had them do this, just kind of work their way through it, and have done it with no problem. So this is really the secret sauce, in my opinion. The system configuration. So I'm gonna show Mobile Tech on the right, Partner Portal on the left. So you basically log in. You're gonna locate the account. Typically look for a customer based on their customer ID. So enter the customer ID. The account will come up. You're going to select the customer ID. You're all very familiar with this process. And the first thing that we want to confirm is, for access control to work, it needs to either be a standalone Smarter Access Control account, or it needs to be a commercial account with access control added to it. So if you get on site, I always recommend, not all technicians have the rights to view the setup on the account, the service package. If not, you need to call and have somebody verify that the account has Smarter Access Control. As you go into the account, you'll notice here, should say 1 access control door. If you're doing 3 or 4, that would show up as well. If I need to change anything, I'm just going to hit change service package. Then I can go in, I can make it an access control account. I can change it to a commercial account. Down here, I can select the number of doors that I'm going to be installing. Save those changes. Same thing on the Mobile Tech site, go to packages. You'll see the number of doors listed. This one has 8 access control doors. If you want to edit it, you just edit service package, select the number of doors, and you're good to go. And then kind of as a last resort, if you get to this page and you don't see the access control tab on Mobile Tech here or on the partner portal, you've got to make some changes on the account in order for it to work. So first thing we're going to do is go into the equipment. We're going to add the controller. So it's add controller in the top right. And these are screenshots and exactly what you should expect to see. So it's make sure your controller is powered off before beginning. You'll hit next. It wants to know, are you using 12 volts or PoE? So you'll verify the jumper in the correct location. Make sure the dip switches are set to off. This still, even though this is on here, this still is one of the main things people forget. So don't forget to turn the dip switches off.
So real quick on that, the reason why people forget is because out of the box, they're all set to on.
Yep.
It's something every time you
Yep.
just gotta know, hey, go turn all those off.
Yep, every time. Okay, next we're going to give the controller a name. So I like to suggest here that you name the controller the location of the controller. So if I'm doing PoE, I would put, over the northeast front door or in the server room. This is just will help when you're doing service on the account. And then you're going to also, and the customer will never see this as well. And then next we're going to enter the MAC address. So you'll see that white piece of paper on the side of the Ethernet port. It's got three stickers with the MAC address on it. It's also on, you can't see it, but on top of the port up above, there's a sticker. So worst case, if that piece of paper is gone, there's still a sticker on the port with a MAC address. When you enter the MAC, it's just the numbers and letters, no colons. Okay, next, power on your controller. And this is what you should see. Typically, here where it says online, it's going to be offline malfunction for just a couple of minutes while it pushes all the information up to the alarm.com cloud. There's a few things that you can look at here to verify. If it doesn't go online, you can look here to make sure that the MAC address is correct. The next, I've got a little video. I did want to show one thing. So on Mobile Tech, you'll get a green checkbox when the controller's online, but the other one will stay red until the tamper is pushed on the can. So there's a tamper on the door. Once that tamper is pushed in, it'll go green, but you don't need to worry about that during the installation. So I've got a quick video that's just going to show the light sequence, but first of all, just want to explain these lights. So number one will flash quickly as it attempts to connect to alarm.com, and then once it's connected, it will flash slower. Once the data is being pushed back and forth between alarm.com and the controller, you're going to start to see a very light, intermittent flash from light number 2. Light number 3 is for card read. So if you're reading a card, it'll flash. 4, 5, and 6 are inputs. So 6 and 5 are your inputs, 1 and 2. And number 4 is the tamper on the can. So
real quick, as you are doing more and more of these, you're going to realize and know what those are. But if you're newer to access control, where would you, is there a little manual that comes with this, or is there something online? So it's all comes with it, and just kind of shows you, hey, this is what LED 1, 2, 3 all represent.
And if all else fails, the best place to get any information, alarm.com, is knowledge base. So hopefully everybody uses knowledge base. That's what our core team uses when they call in for support. It's got everything in it. So I'm just going to start this. Really the key, I think what you're asking, Mark, that light, that number 2, when I see that thing flashing, the account's going to be online.
Okay.
So that's really, when we're doing this, that's all I'm looking for, is to see if that light is going to flash. And I'll just show you what it's. So right there.
Oh, perfect.
You'll see it's going to do it one more time. Right there, that little quick flash. So it's not on constantly. It's just very sporadic. So once you see that, the next thing you're going to see is the account's going to go online. Okay, so we've added the controller. Next, we're going to configure the door. So as you can see on the partner portal side, you just have a little blue section that says add door. On the Mobile Tech site, you want to select the onboard module right here in the middle. Don't click over here on the right, or just click in the middle. And that will take you to this section, add door. Okay, now we're going to name the door. So this is the name that the customer will see. So make sure that you give it a good name that explains where the door's at, so it's easy for the customer to configure the rules and schedules. We're going to save that. And then you'll see this screen. And so basically I can configure the inputs however I wired them. So it doesn't matter if I put the door position switch on 1 or 2. I just need to remember that so that I can configure the software to know which input is there. So we've got our door contact on 1, we've got our Rex on 2. We're going to use reader 1 in this scenario. Now, if I was doing this on a PSE kit on a normal business, I would always use reader 2 first, so that reader 1 is left open for expansion modules if I'm going to add those. Then I go to my relay, configure which relay I'm using. Next, we're going to see configuring the reader. The first thing you have here is default mode after restart. So basically that means if this system goes down for any reason, what condition do I want that lock to come back on? So in this one, I've got it checked for locked. The next one is the credential that's needed. We can use a badge only or a pin and badge. So the pin has got the numbers on it, just like an alarm panel.
To allow you in.
Yep, and it doesn't do both. It's one or the other.
Yep. So this, what you're going over right now, one of the things you just said leads into a question that someone just asked. And they said, if the network goes down, what info or operations will be lost until the network is up again?
So everything is stored. So if this part's done, if I've installed and configured everything, the user is using the system, and I lose connectivity, it will store 50,000 events in the buffer on the controller for 60 days. So I can only unlock and lock the door from the reader.
Yep.
I can't go into my phone because I've lost connectivity to it, right? So everything will work as is. I mean, you wouldn't know it wasn't connected unless you tried to use your phone.
Awesome.
So everything works normal. Okay, so then we've got the unlock time. One thing you'll notice here is it looks like there's a 5 there, but there really isn't. You have to actually type in a number. You can go up to 255 seconds. We talked earlier about the shunt relay configuration for security. This is where you would turn that on. So you're basically saying activate relay 2 before relay 1. So I want the door contact to be activated so that it looks like the door's still closed, and then I want the door to open. Go ahead, got a question?
Yeah, something you just talked about, the history being stored, buffered in there. With that, you can pull up individual history per area, per user.
Yep, per door, everything, yep. And a lot of those reports are currently being built out. Some of that's available now, some of it's not. We're really close to having that finished, but there's a lot of reporting that we'll have in the future that will be what you're talking about. Okay, so this is, now I'm going to configure door sensor 1, because that's where I put my door contact is on sensor 1. And I need to tell it, is this a normally open sensor? Is it normally closed? Does it have a resistor pack? So these are normally closed. And then you also have door held open alarm time. So if I put in here 2 minutes and somebody props that door open, I'm going to get a notification that says, hey, front door's been propped open. So there's an alarm that can be tied to that. And some of the integration that we're currently working on would be tying to input boards that would say, okay, if that door's held open, I want to turn on this strobe light, or I want to turn on this piezo siren, or there's certain things that we'll be able to do in the future that we're not.
Will you do that where if it's during certain times, like it's after 6 o'clock at night, if it's left open for that long, then turn on the light? If it's during the day.
That would be a rule that you would configure.
Awesome.
Exactly. Okay, so we've configured the door input. Now we're going to do the request to exit device, and it's the same thing. We just need to tell it, is it a normally open or normally closed connection? Does it have an end of line resistor pack? And then this is a great spot, Mark, to go in and look. If you're servicing an account or something's not working, I can go in here and look at this hardware configuration and see exactly how I configured it. So I can, maybe the reader's not working. Well, what I typically see when that happens is somebody programmed the reader to 1 and not 2.
So that you'll look at this, and like this one says Rex 1, that's
on
being
input
used, where Rex 2 is none.
Yep.
That's where those would have to be switched.
Yeah, so this one is on input 2, the Rex is, and the door sensor is on input 1. We're using relay 1, and we're using reader 2. So if I'm having issues with my reader, I can go look at the CAN and say, okay, which one did I wire it to? Oh, I actually wired it to reader 1. I configured it to reader 2, so then I can go back in there and fix that. Okay. Same thing on a partner or mobile tech. Just get the same information. It's not as quite as detailed, but most of the same information is there. Okay, and then last but not least, so we've added the controller, we've configured the door, and now we have to configure the cards or add the card format so that the card will actually work. Very simple to do. You manage card formats, and you can do this two ways. I can add a known format, and a known format would be, I have this box because I know it's a 26-bit card, and I know the facility code is 127. A lot of times you go into an existing installation, you don't know which cards they have, so you have to learn those in, and we can do it both ways. So if I'm adding this as a known format, I would select the 26-bit card. It's going to auto-populate our fields over here on the left. You'll notice all those fields are auto-populated. I don't need to know what they mean.
Because all 26-bit cards are going to be the same.
Correct. Facility code is added here. We name it. You name it whatever you want. You can ignore the facility code. So if you've got a lot of different cards with different, or same card, different facility codes, you can just ignore that. We don't suggest that. It's less secure, but you can do that. Save it, and then it will show up. Identify unknown. So this is the easiest way. This is how I would guess 90% of the dealers had a card format. You select the reader. Say it's the front door. I scan my card at the front door, hit next. It'll pull up and tell me that card format is a 34-bit card. The facility code is 402, and the card number is 29636. One thing you need to remember is to check that dot next to it. That won't be selected, so you need to select the dot, hit save, and then you should see all the card formats in this format. So this one's got 3. You can add a total of 16 card formats to an account.
So 16 per account.
Yep. And now I'll just run through this. This is on the Mobile Tech site, so it's similar, but a little bit, there's more steps. So I'm going to go equipment, access control, manage card formats, and identify unknown format. You're going to select the reader.
So this is just doing the exact same thing, just doing it through, showing it through Mobile Tech.
Yep. Add select front door, and you're going to go next. Hit next again, and it will come up and say up at the top, format scan mode activated. You're going to hit next, scan the card, and there you go.
And it pulls all that information in automatically.
Yeah.
So one thing I like about this rod that I'm noticing, and this is like with alarm.com, is whether you're learning in a camera or different things on their site, it seems like it's kind of walking you through.
Yep.
And if you're used to doing other things with alarm.com, this is kind of the same thing. It walks you through it. Maybe if you are kind of new to access control and new to alarm.com, then you can get on the knowledge base. You could reach out to Core, which tech support, and they're awesome at walking, and helping guys learn how to do this.
Yep. First question they're going to ask you is, did you look on knowledge base? So always look first before you call.
Because that's where they get their answers. It's all in there in knowledge base.
Yep.
And where is knowledge base, just in case someone doesn't know?
So on Partner Portal or Mobile Tech, in the top right-hand corner, there's a little question mark, and you just click on that.
And it's actually on a screen right there, a little question mark.
Right there. One thing, don't forget to check that box and hit save, and there's what you would see on the Mobile Tech site. Okay, got any questions?
So just repeat, how many facility codes and formats can you support per account? Was that 16?
Yep.
We also, let's see, can you bulk load a box of cards or individually?
Yes. So you can, through an Excel file, you can import users, cards, all that information. So if you have 900, like we did one at the very beginning of last year, Jared did 900 plus users, and they just imported all those. Now you still have to add them to an access plan, which we're not going to go into today, but it is much easier with the import tool.
Okay. And then this is, can you have more than one FC?
FC.
Not sure what that meant.
I don't know.
James, let us know You mean by FC. And then also we've been talking about all these different users you're adding in now. And you talked about Alarm.com's working on making more reports. Is one of those an attendance report where you can see,
Yeah, so we're working, maybe I shouldn't even address this, but I know we're working to tie into time management type software. So, you scan, you're actually at work now. That could be out of ways, but we do get that request.
Yep. Awesome. And that's what I like. I feel like you guys are able to get requests and then actually work on it and make things happen.
Yeah.
I know Qolsys, we're always innovating. I do feel like Alarm.com, they're always pushing things with access control being, something that's newer for some people with Alarm.com. They're definitely getting the feedback from the field, sharing that with their engineers, the test teams and stuff, and making innovations and making it better as it goes along.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great time to be a part of the access control team at Alarm.com because everything's changing so quick. We get a lot of feedback from the field, the trainings that we do, and we're always adding that stuff.
You have more than one facility code.
Yes, absolutely.
So you can't have more than one facility code.
Yep. So Mark, we're kind of running up on the end of our hour. There's some more that we could go into on expansion modules and how those are wired, but I think it might be best to leave that for another time. I would like to.
So real quick, this was set for 1 hour. It's a ton of information, and this is kind of the I would say part one. We talked with Rod yesterday, and there's so much information here, and that we want to bring Rod back or somebody on his team and actually do more of a deep dive into access control and more of it, getting more into the advanced settings and understanding access control.
Yeah, because we really haven't touched anything on the user side, right? This is just up through the installation, adding the cards. The next piece would be, the expansions. How do you wire the expansions? And then really, we could do another hour on just the user side and how to add a user and creating schedules and all that stuff. So, but this is a really good place to stop. I would like to just talk about the power supply real quick. So we brought this up earlier. Mark actually brought it up about 12 volts and 24 volts. This is what he was talking about. So on the power supply, there's a jumper right here, 24 volts or 12 volts.
Yep.
Okay. So if you switch that to 12 volts, you're going to lose your B100. And for me, I would never do that.
Always leave it at 24.
I would always leave it at 24. And the reason being is this. So 24 volts is much more efficient power.
Yeah.
I can wire in this example that I have here. So if I have 3 amps of power, which is what I have at 12 volts, if I switch it, and I have a basic 250 milliamp lock, I can do with 24 volts, I could do 12 locks. At 12 volts, I could only do 8 locks. So it just shows how much more efficient it is. You can do more devices. Most devices work more efficiently with more power.
Yep.
They run cooler. Everything is better at 24 volts. And as we've traveled around the country, I've come to realize that a lot of people use 12 volts, not because of any specific reason, other than they're scared of 24 volts.
That's what they've always done, maybe. Oh, yeah, 12 volts,
yeah.
It just sounds like normal. We'll do that.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know if I know how 24 volts works,
Yep.
But just be aware, look at your devices, look at the hardware. If it's 24 volts, use the 24 volts. If it's not, go ahead and use the 12. If you can buy devices that work off 24 volts, that's what I would do.
Okay. Right. And then also, Rod, just some of your best practices. So this is one of them. Hey, this is like a little tip and trick, from Alarm.com and their access control team that they've seen. What are some other tips you have for guys getting into this? Or
so one thing we see a lot is the connectivity. There's issues there sometimes. The customer's internet may be locked down. In most cases, it's pretty simple plug and play. But you may have to do a hard reset occasionally, or a soft reset. That reset button in the top right-hand corner, I use that a lot. When we're installing, things get wired up and you make a change, or you unplug something, and just hit the reset button before you go and start adding things. That really will clean everything out, refreshes the controller, everything will work smoother. The other thing that I see a lot.
And that's a power cycle.
Yep.
That's an easy way to power cycle. You don't need to disconnect anything. You just push that button down and it power cycles it for you.
Yep. The other thing that I see a lot, especially in the trainings we do, is people wire things to like a reader. They'll wire it to reader 2, but they program it to reader 1. And they beat their head on the wall for hours trying to figure it out. So first thing, if things are not working, the first thing I would always suggest is go to the CAN, pull up your mobile tech, partner portal, whatever you're using, and compare it. And make sure you got the door contact on 1, your Rex on input 2, and verify that your reader's wired to the right port. So those are the things that we see a lot of when we're doing trainings, when we're doing installs, that people make mistakes. So I think that's it. Unless we've got some other questions, real quick. Again, knowledge base is huge. Click on the question mark down below. You can enter in whatever you're searching for. If I've got an access control question, it's access control or card formats or whatever you're looking for. We also do a great job of doing some tech podcasts that you can go in and listen to. Release notes. So alarm.com is changing things all the time, right?
Yep.
I go in here every day just to keep up on the releases and the new things that are coming out from alarm.com. So you can do the same thing here on knowledge base. Some of the things you might look for: controller offline, soft reset, factory reset, how to do a static IP. It'll show wiring diagrams. Everything's here. So make sure you use it. Again, Mark, really appreciate the time. We're more than happy to stay on and answer any questions everybody has, but I think that's all I've got.
Once again, thank you, Rod Halford, for taking your time and doing this with us. Like we mentioned earlier, we are going to have a follow-up with access control in a couple of weeks with Rod or a member of his team to get a little deeper into things and get on the user side. So, this presentation that we just have shared with you, it will be posted to the Qolsys dealer site. So if you do have questions, you can, like I said, please post them. We are going to leave this the meeting up so you can ask questions for another 5 minutes or so. Even though we're going to take ourselves offline, we will be answering questions for you. But thanks for everybody that got on. We had incredible attendance today. So thanks a ton, and we look forward to having another one of these webinars in the upcoming days. Thank you. Anything else, Rod?
I got nothing else.
All right. You guys have a great week, and we'll hear from you soon. And like I said, we'll be answering questions for the next little bit here if you want to pop in any questions.